VMware host client. Be aware that we only create a virtual machine in this lab. We're not going to boot it up and install the guest operating system. We just want to get familiar with the procedure of creating a virtual machine using the wizard. Since we will use the VMware host client user interface to create the virtual machine, you should be familiar with the host client graphical user interface. In the first task, we will create a virtual machine on an ESXi host. We want to perform the configuration on a standalone ESXi host, SA-ESXi01. So the first step is to connect to this host. Then we log in using the locally configured root account. To create a new virtual machine, we first make sure that the host is selected in the navigator pane. Then we click Create Register VM in the right pane. As you can see, the new virtual machine wizard opens. On the first page of the wizard, we have to select the creation type. The options are to create a new virtual machine, that's what we are going to do, or you could deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file, or you could register an existing virtual machine. What does register an existing virtual machine mean? This means that you already have a virtual machine on the data store, it's saved, but it's not added to the inventory of the ESXi host. Anyway, in our case, as said, we want to create a new virtual machine from scratch. So we select the first option, we click Next, and then we get to the next page where we have to enter the name of the virtual machine. In our case, we will call the virtual machine Win10 empty. Then we select the compatibility. So this indicates what hardware version we want to use for the virtual machine. The higher the hardware version, the more features and improvements are built into that virtual machine. But if you want to be backwards compatible to any older version of ESXi or VMware Workstation, then you would have to select the corresponding entry. In our case, we keep the default, which is ESXi 7.0, and then we select the guest operating system family, Windows, and the guest OS version, in our case, is Windows 10 64-bit. We click Next. Now we have to select the storage on which we want to create the virtual machine. We only have a single data store on this ESXi host, so that one is already selected. We simply click Next to move on. And now we can customize the hardware settings. The hardware settings that we get are actually based on the guest operating system that we selected earlier. It's kind of a minimum or recommended hardware configuration, but of course we have the option to modify it. So let's do that. In our case, we only want to use a single CPU, 1 gig of memory, and 12 gigabyte for the hard disk. We keep the controllers, so there is a SCSI controller, LSI logic SAS, which is used for the hard disk, and there is an SATA controller, which is used for the CD or DVD drive. We keep all of those, and now we want to mount an ISO image to the CD drive. So we refer to the datastore, ISO file. The ISO files are stored in the ISO directory on the ESXi host. And we select the Windows ISO file. So this is a bootable DVD that includes the guest operating system Windows 10. In this case, and we can boot from this DVD to install Windows. Let's expand the settings of the DVD drive. And let me scroll down a little bit. You can see that the status says connected power on. This option is checked. So that means that the CD is in its drive from the beginning. So when we power on, we have the option to boot from the DVD drive. We leave all the remaining settings at their default values. And then we click Next. So this is the last page of the wizard. We see a review of the configuration settings, so we can have a look at them one more time, check that everything is right, and once we are happy, we click Finish. Now when we click Virtual Machines in the Navigator pane, we can see that our VM has been added. This is the VM that we just added, Win10 empty. When we click on the link, then we're taken to the VM, and again we see a summary general information, and we see the hardware configuration here. We can expand items to see more details. For example, let's check again our ISO image that we mount as a DVD. So it shows us where the ISO is located, that it's currently not connected. Why is it not connected? Because the virtual machine is not powered on. Remember, we did activate that checkbox to connect the DVD at power up, so as soon as we would boot up that VM, the DVD would be connected. Let's have a look at the hard disk. Under backing, we can see the location on the data store, so it's the ICM data store, and this is our directory and the file name of the virtual disk file with a capacity of 12 GB. It's not SIM provisioned, so we're using thick provisioning, that's the default. We see that it is attached to our SCSI controller, and it's a dependent disk. Dependent means that you are able to create snapshots for that virtual disk. So we successfully created the virtual machine. Usually the next step would be powering up the virtual machine, installing the guest operating system. We're not going to do that in this lab, so the idea was just to create the virtual machine, to get familiar with the steps of the wizard, and actually in the next task of this lab we will delete the virtual machine. So now we want to delete the virtual machine that we just created. To delete the VM, in the Navigator pane, you can right-click the virtual machine that you want to delete. And then note that you have two options. One is unregister, the other one is delete. Unregister only removes the virtual machine from the inventory, but it would still be on the disk and you could register it later on. When you pick the delete option, the virtual machine, along with all its files, including the disk file, is going to be deleted from the data store. That's what we want to do here, so I chose delete VM. I have to confirm by clicking delete, and the virtual machine and all its associated files are deleted from the storage. The VM is not in the list anymore, it's gone. Congratulations, you have completed the Create a Virtual Machine lab demonstration video. In this lab, we first created a virtual machine and verified its hardware configuration. Then we deleted the virtual machine. Be aware that we only created a virtual machine. We didn't boot it up. In real life, after creating a virtual machine, you would boot it up. In our case, you would boot to the ISO image that we mounted as a DVD, and then you would install the guest operating system and VMware Tools. Thank you for watching this lab demonstration video. I hope the knowledge acquired here will help you with your daily job assignments, and good luck as you continue your journey in VMware world. Hello and welcome to this lab demonstration on installing VMware Tools. After completing this lab demo, you will be able to install VMware Tools on a guest virtual machine using the VMware host client. In this lab, we will install VMware Tools on a Windows 10 virtual machine. The overall procedure, however, is the same on other guest operating systems. The VMware Tools software is mounted as a DVD on the guest virtual machine and is installed on the guest operating system from that mounted DVD. In the first task, we will power on a virtual machine, open a console to the virtual machine, and then identify some limitations that we face on virtual machines that do not have VMware Tools installed and running on the guest operating system. We want to perform the configuration on a standalone ESXi host, SA-ESXi01. So the first step is to connect to this host. Then we log in using the locally configured root account. Now we select virtual machines in the navigator pane. We click the VM that we want to boot up. This is Win10 Tools. And then we click Power On. We have a small console window here, which we can refresh. And once we see that the VM is powered up, we can now open a console. We click the console menu item. And in our case, we want to open a console connection in a new browser tab. The Windows guest operating system on this virtual machine is configured with auto login. So to verify which user we are logged in as, I open a command box and enter who am I. So we can see that our user is vClass administrator. Why is that important? Because when you install VMware Tools, you have to have administrative privileges. Before we go to the next task of this lab, installing VMware Tools, you might wonder if and how you can check whether VMware Tools are installed and running on a virtual machine. Is this possible? Yes, it is. Let me show you. We need to go back to the VMware host client user interface. And up here, we can see VMware Tools and it just says no, but we can get more details by opening VMware Tools under General Information. And down here we can see that VMware Tools are not installed. Therefore, of course, there is no version and it's not running. Once we installed it, we will see a yes here. And when the VM is running and VMware Tools are running, this item at the bottom, running, will also change to yes. And in addition, we will see what version is installed on the guest operating system. So what are the consequences or limitations when VMware Tools are not running on a virtual machine? One of the issues is that we cannot shut down the guest operating system from the VMware host client. When I right-click the virtual machine, I can power the virtual machine off, I can suspend it, I can reset it.